Hi, I'm Max Meyer, Sports Illustrated's gambling producer, and alongside me is Scott Gramling.
What's up, everybody?
NFL Week 5, we cannot wait for it to start, and we're going to give out our 5 best bets of the week. But before we do, let's just recap what we did for Week 4 last week in our inaugural show. So the 5 bets that we went with, we took Giants plus 3.5 against the Saints. We took Titans, Eagles under 20.5.
Yep.
Against or first half.
First half.
Yep. And then we took Raiders minus 2.5 first half against the Browns.
Yep.
We took the Texans plus 1.5 against the Colts. And then we disagreed on this. It was Falcons minus 5.5 against the Bengals, even though we both suggested at the end that we liked the over, and that
we
covered
did.
with
We
ease.
did. That's where we came to an agreement. So I don't know. I don't know if we could take credit for that, but that's where we were. And you got me on that one. I had you. I had you about 59 minutes and 56 seconds into it. But
no, but the Falcons defense can't stop a lick. But going into that, so just before we get into our bets, let's just talk about what we learned from our bets last week, especially the unsuccessful ones. So with Falcons defense, so many injuries. So they lost linebacker Deion Jones. They lost safety Keanu Neal. They won't have defensive tackle Grady Jarrett against the Steelers this upcoming week, and then safety Ricardo Allen goes down.
Yep.
And Allen is kind of the straw that broke the camel's back, because ever since he went down in those 11 possessions, the Falcons defense has allowed 7 touchdowns on those 11 possessions, which is insanely high.
Yeah, I think teams that are that talented defensively can withstand a couple of hits, even with Jones and Neal going out. You knew there were going to be problems, but you wouldn't think it was a complete disaster. At this point, they're rolling guys out there that shouldn't be in the league, quite frankly, and that's really what showed toward the end of that game, throughout, but especially at the end, and it ultimately did do the Falcons in.
And I think just one interesting thing to note on the Bengals, so one metric that I love using to determine what sides or totals I'm betting is explosive plays.
Yeah.
So what that means is offensive, when they're running the ball, plays that go for 12 yards or more, and passes that go for 20 yards or more. And the Bengals are one of only 2 teams in the NFL, with the Chargers being the other, and more on them later. The Bengals are one of 2 teams in the NFL that are top 5 in both explosive run plays on offense and explosive pass plays. So that's really an offense that no one saw coming as an elite unit, and so far they performed like it, and now they get Joe Mixon back.
That's the thing, and Mixon has been out, and one of those games, because it's such a small sample size, you really do need to dig in. One of those games against the Ravens, and the Ravens have been one of the top defenses in the league, so I don't think you can just say it's not a case like we had going in last week with the Dolphins, who were 3-0, but when you look more closely, they were 29th against the pass, and they were 29th against the pass despite having faced Blaine Gabbert, Marcus Mariota, Derek Carr, and Sam Darnold. So, it wasn't that much of a surprise that the Patriots moved the ball at will. Getting back to what this Bengals team is doing, very impressive. Again, small sample size, but against, not easy competition when you're looking at, I know we just bagged on the Falcons a little bit, but other than that, you're looking at a team that went on the road against Carolina, and, they played at home against the Ravens. And
Colts,
I'm drawing a blank. Colts defense is better this year.
It's been pretty good.
Yeah, and that was that was a game there where the Colts weren't as banged up as they find themselves now. So, it's going to be an intriguing team to watch from this point forward, especially when they do get Mixon back.
Another game we learned a lot from our picks last week was the Raiders-Browns overtime game. And Raiders, they had no business winning that game. And the first half was the bad read. And Raiders still covered because they got the game-winning field goal in overtime, and the line was 2.5. But I just think that the refs really jobbed the Browns in that game with the Carlos Hyde overturn on the first down that would have sealed an 8-point win for the Browns. And then the Derek Carr non-fumble that was a textbook definition of the fumble.
Absolutely. Jimmy Traina will agree with you if you listen to our podcast. A very salty Jimmy Traina this week about what ended up happening there. But you're absolutely right. I mean, the outcome, when you look at the win-loss column, or win-loss tie column, as it goes with the Browns, 1-2-1, and they've really had a chance in all 4 of those games. We'll get to it, but there's value there with the Browns, and who thought we would be saying that, going back 6 weeks, 6 months, or 9 months. But, that's where we're at right now.
No, and if you looked ahead at the look-ahead lines, which are the lines that Vegas posts on the following week games before the Sunday games start, the Browns were only +1 against the Ravens at home before the Raiders game, and the Raiders were +7 on the road against the Chargers, and now those lines have completely been bet down and then bet up. So just one fluky result from that game, and I think that we're going to get value on ensuing lines for this week. And then the final game that we'll go into is Giants-Saints, and we got this one wrong, which was Giants +3.5. And we just thought that the Giants would be able to take advantage of the Saints' porous pass defense, and they did not. The Giants actually now rank 30th in explosive pass plays on offense, which is surprising given that they have Odell. You just drafted Saquon Barkley at number 2 to help that facet of the offense as well. Sterling Shepard, but yeah, still nothing.
I mean, it on paper, there's no reason why this offense should be that bad. And you also think, I just felt like you bring in Shermer as your head coach, you draft a versatile running back 2 overall, you give Odell Beckham that long-term contract, and that's what you come up with as, a conservative type game plan. And, after the game, Shermer saying, well, they're playing zone over the top. And it's like, this offense has to get more creative than that. I mean, Shermer was doing a lot more with seemingly a little less with the Vikings last year, but that's certainly not looking to be the case here. Very, very surprising, because I did think that in that Texans game, the Giants started to show signs of that offense starting to click and the play calling starting to get better, and they just regressed to where they were the first 2 weeks, except the first 2 weeks, they had an excuse here playing against really good defenses.
Yeah.
And that was not the case going against the Saints. They made the Saints look like a very good defense, whereas, all evidence was to the contrary leading into that game.
And I think actually really misleading box score in the first half. The Saints were only up 12-7. So people were thinking, oh, it's a close game, the Giants have a chance. But so the Saints went 3 and out on their first drive, but their other 4 possessions in the first half, they all went into the red zone.
Yep.
And they just couldn't finish, and that's what they ended up doing in the second half. But I just think that the Giants defense, granted they were playing against the Saints offense that is among the best in the league, but they were giving up tons of yards, and I think that unit is also an issue for this team.
Yep. No, absolutely. I think that across the board, the Giants have issues.
So with that, let's go into our first bet that we love this week, which is Carolina Panthers coming off a bye at home against the aforementioned New York Giants. And we're looking at a first half play. We're actually looking at Panthers -4 first half. And Scott, what do you think?
Yeah, I love this play. I think Panthers, last 3 years coming off the bye week, 3-0 straight up, 3-0 against the spread, been scoring an awful lot of points. Panthers at home, their record might not blow you away, but when you look at it a bit deeper, the teams that have played well in Carolina are the teams in the division, the teams that are familiar with the Panthers. Last 19 games against non-divisional opponents in Charlotte, Panthers are 16-3 straight up, 14-4-1 against the spread. I just think that year in and year out, really, the Panthers tend to get undervalued a bit, and this is it's a tough spot from what we've seen so far from the Giants. And obviously, you and I were talking about this, before we started recording this, and I think you bring up a great point and a great angle as to why to just go first half instead of playing it for the game.
Yeah, so a couple reasons why I really like the Panthers in this game. So they rank number 1 in explosive rush plays on offense in the entire NFL. They have a rushing play of at least 12 yards or more 20% of the time. So 1 out of 5 plays. And this is a Giants defense that has particularly struggled on early downs. They've allowed 7.3 yards per play on first down, which is the highest in the NFL. And then also the Panthers' offensive line, according to Football Outsiders, offensive line run blocking efficiency, they rank number 1, and they're getting star right guard Trey Turner back for this game. So I just really think that this is a great chance for the Panthers to set the tone early, run the ball with Christian McCaffrey, who is averaging, I think, 2 yards per carry higher this year compared to last year. Cam Newton looks great. The North Turner experiment in Carolina has gone really well so far offensively, I think. And the Giants, on the other hand, they've started off the first half really conservatively. I feel like they've been trying to showcase Barkley a little bit too much. And instead of being aggressive on offense, they've been running him on early downs, and he has not been successful so far. And that's why in 3 of their 4 games, they've scored 7 or fewer points in the first half.
Yep.
And so I just think that the Panthers get off to a big lead. And the problem with the Panthers is their secondary, and when the Giants, when they're forced to be aggressive when they're down by multiple scores, that's when we see the aggressive pass offense that we want to see in the first half. But like you said, I've been disappointed with how Shermer's been calling the plays this year. And so that's why we're kind of protecting ourselves against the backdoor cover here, taking first half. But I just think that the Panthers' rushing attack will very much overwhelm the Giants.
I think so too. And I think when you look at the Giants, right? I mean, they're one of only 7 NFL teams allowing an average of more than 4.7 yards per rushing attempt. And you look at what the Panthers have done in recent history under Ron Rivera, 19-10 against the spread, against defenses that give up 4.5 or more yards per carry. And in those 29 games, which is a large sample size, the Panthers are averaging 30 points a game. You don't think of the Panthers as being a kind of high-powered offense, but 30 points a game in that kind of a sample size shows the type of defenses that they consistently are able to take advantage of. And 30 points, that's a big problem going against the Giants. Giants haven't reached 30 points in a game since Tom Coughlin was the team's head coach.
That's crazy.
It's insane. It just doesn't make any sense with the kind of offensive talent that, again, on paper, that they have. Something has to change, and I think eventually it will, but this is not the right spot to expect that it will.
One more stat about how underwhelming the Giants have been this season, but on 71.4 of their offensive snaps have been taken when they've been trailing in games, which is the highest in the NFL, even higher than the winless Cardinals. And this is just a team that struggles to get off to good starts, and that's why we love the first half here.
Yep, absolutely.
But second game, we're going with another Cat team, except we're going underdog here, and we're going Jaguars +3 in Kansas City. And Scott, I know you love this trend of Monday night road teams coming up to play Sundays. Yeah,
I do. Teams that are playing the following Sunday after being on the road on Monday. Last season were 4-12 straight up, 5-11 against the spread. And I looked deeper at those 4 wins, and they were against weak opponents. One of them was the Vikings coming off a Monday night road game against the Bears, ended up playing the Packers in the game that Aaron Rodgers got hurt in the first quarter. So the Vikings go on to win and cover that game.
Brett Hundley had no chance.
Oh, my gosh. Absolutely not. Another one of the games was the Lions played on a Monday night and then on the road and then came back and they ended up beating the Browns. We know what the Browns were all about last year. Falcons were another one of those teams that ended up coming back and beating the Buccaneers when the Buccaneers had already packed it in. The fourth one, interesting, the fourth win and cover was the Patriots had gone down to Miami on the Monday night when they rested a lot of starters, and then they played that game in Pittsburgh as a 2.5-point favorite, won by 3 on the Jesse James play that easily could have been a Pittsburgh cover. So it just shows that consistently underperforming. Now, that was the reason last week, unfortunately not in this episode, that I ended up playing heavy on the Ravens because it was the Steelers that were coming off the road game on the Monday night, and sure enough, they lose by 12 as a 3-point favorite in a game that on paper looks like it could have gone either way. Well, that team now is the Chiefs, and not only are the Chiefs coming off the Monday night road game, I think there's a little added challenge coming out of the thin air, a hotly contested game against a divisional rival, and not only that, they're coming and they're playing a team that, if they're not the best defense in the league, they're top 3 for sure. And I just feel like as much as I love Pat Mahomes, as much as I've been riding the Chiefs to this point in the season, this is it's an extremely tough spot here. And I think a lot of the value with the Chiefs in recent years has been in the division. Andy Reid is just consistently outthinking, outsmarting, and outcoaching the coaches on the other teams, which I know isn't saying a lot because the other teams are the Chargers, it's the Raiders, and it's the Broncos that haven't been the best coach teams in the league. But that's where the Chiefs have really, in their last 19 games against AFC West opponents, 18-1 straight up and 15-4 against the spread. So you take that out of it, now you're looking at non-divisional game that they have coming up, a team they're not that familiar with. Not that I'm putting stock into this, but I think it's an interesting little number that since 2007, the Chiefs are 2-10 against the spread at home against AFC South opponents. Again, I'm not really reading into that, but I think it just goes to show, in general, the Chiefs really have been preparing well and beating up on divisional opponents. And this is a spot here coming off a short week against a fast, aggressive, physical defense. I just think there's so many reasons to like the Jaguars in this spot.
So I love this matchup just because obviously it's Chiefs and Patrick Mahomes, one of the most explosive pass offenses in the league versus, I think, the best pass defense in the league. And so when those two units are such evenly matched, I like to look into the numbers. And explosive plays are one metric that I love using, and another is yards per play, both on offense and defense. And I especially like to look at net yards per play, which is subtracting the offensive yards per play minus the defensive yards per play, just to see how good both units are performing. So number one in net yards per play is the Rams at 1.6. Second is the Jaguars at 1.4, just because I think Bortles, besides an absolute clunker against the Titans in week 3, he's actually performed better than expected in most games, and especially against the Jets last week. He looked incredible.
And the Patriots too.
Yep. But the Jets, so that was with Leonard Fournette back, and I think the Jaguars' offense completely shifts gears when Fournette's back. They're a lot more conservative, and so they ran Fournette a lot more on first down. But on second and third down, Bortles was averaging over 11 yards per attempt, which is a remarkably high number against the Jets pass defense, which is below average, but they still have a lot of talent. And then the Chiefs, on the other hand, their net yard per play is actually negative. They're negative 0.1 yards just because the defense has been that bad. And then regarding big plays, not only have the Jaguars allowed only 8 plays of 20 or more yards, which is a strong number, but their offense has gotten 17 plays of 20 or more yards. And that 9 differential between the offense and defense, that leads the NFL. So that's good that they're, 1, exploding on offense, and 2, they're limiting the big play. So I just think the Jaguars are the much more balanced team, and I'll gladly take 3, except I think that the Chiefs are probably going to be bet up to 3.5 because they're a public team. But I just think just like it was with Jaguars-Patriots, Patriots have the reputation. The Jaguars, I feel like the public's still a little uncertain on Blake Bortles, but this is a legitimate Super Bowl contender, and I do not think that the Chiefs are even on a neutral field with the Jaguars.
Especially in this tough spot.
Yeah.
And I do buy into the Monday Night Road team. It just continues to expose just underperforming coming off of that tough spot.
Yeah. So the third game, we're going to side with the public on this one because we don't get how the line is this low. But we're going to take the Rams -7 on the road in Seattle. And normally I hate laying that amount of points, especially in a divisional game. But we just don't see how Vegas is giving Seattle this much respect.
I think it has to do with the home field. We were talking a little bit earlier about how the Rams crushed the Seahawks in mid-December last year. Yeah. Maybe there's some revenge thought going into this, but I think it's crazy with how much the Seahawks are reeling, right? I mean, they felt like at best an 8-8 team coming into the year. Both of us were on the under the 8 in the regular season total. But if you want to make a case like, all right, they're an 8-8, they're not an 8-8 team right now with Earl Thomas going out. There's nothing left at the back of that defense, and just look at what the Rams did against the Vikings, and they have the extra 3 days to prepare coming off the Thursday night game. I just, when I see a home underdog of this amount, I force myself to try and find any possible angle to, if not take that underdog, to at least sway me away from the favorite. And it's very rare that I'm laying a touchdown or more with a team that's playing on the road. But I could not find an angle in favor of the Seahawks here that scare me away from thinking anything other than, this just feels like a 34-17 type of game.
Yeah, and you mentioned Earl Thomas, and I don't think that there is a defensive player that means more to his defense than Earl Thomas. So the Seahawks right now, their defense is 19th in allowing explosive pass plays, which is a little below average, but they're facing the Rams, who are number 1 in offensive explosive pass plays. But now listen to the difference. So Earl Thomas suffered a season-ending injury in the 2016 season in Week 13, and that was granted with a more star-studded Seattle defense. Yep. But the difference with him on the field versus him off the field, on the field, the Seahawks defense was 8th in allowing explosive pass plays. Off the field, 31st. And I can't think of another player who just dictates that kind of importance on a defense.
And it's the scheme as well.
Yeah.
They play that kind of defensive scheme that puts a lot of pressure on that safety. They put a lot of responsibility on his shoulders, and he had earned that responsibility as one of the best free safeties in the league. And who's going to play that spot now? It just... I don't know. I can't see how this isn't, and again, we can't stress enough that we do not like taking road favorites of 7 or more points, but it just doesn't seem like enough points.
Yeah, and then just another note, just with I was really impressed with Jared Goff in that Rams-Viking game. He was making incredible throws, but the thing to really take away from this and the Rams games this season, they love play action, and they love play action on early downs. And that is one of the most efficient ways to move the ball. The Rams actually average 7.3 yards per play on first down, and giving Goff and Todd Gurley and the rest of that group second and shorts consistently, that's going to be a huge issue. And then let's look at the other side of the ball quickly, even though we love the Rams offense versus the Seattle defense. That enough is getting us to bet this. Yeah. But the Rams, so much was made with pairing Ndamukong Suh with Aaron Donald in the offseason, thinking, oh, they're going to get a ton of sacks. And they're only 22nd in sacks, but they still are number 1 in pressure rate, and they are pressuring the quarterback over 41% of the time this season. And against a Seattle offensive line that's struggling, if you can get a couple sacks and then force the Seahawks into second and third and long plays, they don't have the firepower to really overcome that.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's a type of pressure as well, right? Pressure from Aaron Donald up the middle is, I think, the type of pressure that Russell Wilson struggles with a little more. I feel like when he's getting pressured from the outside, he's able to scramble out of the pocket and make plays. It's, a smaller quarterback with pressure in his face. It just doesn't... It just doesn't seem to be a good spot, no matter how you slice it, for the Seattle Seahawks here.
And if you need one last argument to sway your mind, Sean McVay versus Brian Schottenheimer, mic drop. You will not see a bigger offensive coaching mismatch than that, probably for the entire season.
Or the entire rest of history.
So the fourth play, this might seem like a hold your nose play to some, because we are taking the Browns here in their game against the Ravens, just because the Ravens look great on Sunday night. Yeah. Sunday night, and the Browns are now 1-2-1, and it's tough backing Hugh Jackson, but we're still taking the Browns +3 home underdogs. And Scott, fire away with why we like it.
Yeah, we talked about before about these Monday night road teams, and that's what the Steelers were last week. So, yep, give the Ravens credit, right? They rolled over the Steelers, and, it's the divisional game, big divisional game that looked impressive, but it was a tough spot for the Steelers, as we talked about before. The road team coming off Monday night, having to play on Sunday, they've just been overperforming, so that's one thing. No doubt about it, the Ravens statistically have been dominant. Now, a lot of that is that week 1 blowout of Buffalo, yeah, where it was as lopsided a game as really you're going to see at the NFL level.
Nathan Peterman should never start again.
Oh, gosh, please. When you look at, and this is where I really think this betting system highlights the fact that the Ravens are a bit overvalued here. You look at teams that are outscoring their opponents by 10 or more points per game. When they're coming off back-to-back games where they've given up 14 or fewer points since the start of the 2014 season, those dominant teams are 2-14 against the spread. Wow. And I think it just goes to show that when a team is consistently dominating, and for the most part, the Ravens have. I mean, they lost the game at Cincinnati in week 2, but aside from that, they've beaten the Bills like we talked about. They won by 13 at home against the Broncos, and they won against the Steelers. And again, the Ravens are a team that I think has found itself in some very favorable spots early in the season. I just feel like here, this to be getting 3 at home with the Browns, I think is a play you have to make. And again, that betting system to me highlights the fact that yes, the Ravens have been dominating, but not to the extent that they should be getting this much respect from the odds makers.
Yep, and the look-ahead line before the Browns lost the Raiders in overtime and before the Ravens beat the Steelers, it was only Ravens by 1, and now we're getting a full field goal. I just think that there's a letdown play in effect with the Ravens coming off a big win over their biggest rival, and then they see the Browns, they still have a losing record, even though admittedly, very good argument you could make that the Browns should be 4-0 this season.
Yeah.
Despite incompetent coaching and abysmal special teams, this is a group that, and starting Tyrod Taylor for the first 2.5 games.
Let's remember that. Right.
And they still should be undefeated because they have a lot of talent in a lot of key areas, and the offense has looked much better with Baker Mayfield at the helm. But I'm with you. I think that this is a great spot. I think that this is giving too much respect to the Ravens, and it's tough to go full Browns and take the money line here just because the Ravens have a huge special teams advantage. Yeah. Going Justin Tucker versus Greg Joseph in a kicker battle in what should be a close game. Obviously, you have to go with Tucker every time. Yeah. But I think just getting a field goal here, I think the Browns will compete and they'll be in this game throughout, and I like getting 3 points here.
Yep. Agreed.
So then the final game we're going with a total here. And the highest total on the board this week is Steelers-Falcons at 57.5, but below that at 53, Raiders-Chargers. And these two pass defenses have been the two worst in the NFL in terms of allowing huge plays. And I just think with the Chargers, like how I said before, that they're one of only 2 teams in the NFL to rank top 5 in explosive runs and passes. And the Raiders on the other end, they've had some success, especially passing the ball on early downs, but I've liked how Derek Carr has looked. Derek Carr, and I really like how Jared Cook has looked at tight end. But I just think that this is a shootout.
It looks from every angle that you look at it like it is going to be a shootout. And you mentioned how bad these pass defenses have been. Now, I think naysayers might be like, oh, yeah, well, I mean, they've each played the Rams. True. And yes, the Chargers have played the Chiefs. However, I think that's offset, if not more than offset, by the fact that the Chargers have also gone up against the Bills. And
the 49ers with C.J. Beathard.
49ers with C.J. Beathard. And you look at who the Raiders have gone against Case Keenum. Ryan Tannehill, we saw what Tannehill did.
Raiders. You're right. Sorry about that.
No, that's right. Yeah. Case Keenum with the Broncos now, right? We tend to forget. And Tannehill with, look what he did against the Patriots last week, right? So they've been giving up yards to these teams that just don't have good passing attacks. And look, Baker Mayfield is an improvement over Tyrod Taylor, but it's not a case where at this point you can consider that Browns passing offense among the elite. So I think when you look at when it's such a small sample size, it's not skewed where, these pass defenses are actually better than what you might think because they face good opponents. Yeah, they've both faced the Rams and one's faced the Chiefs, but it's offset from the other end. So I think these are true numbers. I really do think that these are bad pass defenses, and it really shouldn't be that surprising because Chargers have injury problems, and Bosa's out, so they're not getting pressure on the quarterback, and Verrett's out. He's been out the whole season since preseason. And look what the Raiders, there's no reason to believe coming into the season that the Raiders defense was going to be any good against the pass because it was horrific last year against the pass, and they didn't really make any improvements. So this does look like a shootout no matter how you slice it, and each team is going to be throwing the ball against the other team. There's going to be a lot of passes, and there's going to be an awful lot of yards and I think an awful lot of points in this game. And, whereas on the surface, 53 seems like it's, a high total. I don't see how this game isn't something like 31-24 at a minimum.
Yeah. And just a couple stats throughout. So the Raiders are allowing 13.9 yards per completion, which is dead last in the NFL, and the Chargers are allowing 13 yards per completion, which is second to last. Chargers defense in terms of percentage of explosive pass plays allowed, so that's 20 or more yards on a throw, dead last, and the Raiders are 31st. And then the Raiders, they lead the NFL in touchdowns allowed outside the red zone, so at least 21-yard touchdowns or higher. Yeah. So I just think, like you were saying with the Joey Bosa injury and then the Raiders trading away Khalil Mack, these teams' pass rushes have definitely fallen off from last season, and just because that's put added pressure on the secondaries and they haven't been able to stop anything because of it. You got to help them out with some pass rush. And I know the Chargers still have Melvin Ingram, but having Bosa alongside him, that's when the Chargers pass rush becomes really deadly. But for now, with Bosa still out, I think that this is a Chargers defense that Derek Carr can still take advantage of.
Yeah, I don't think, we've kind of been busting a little bit on the Falcons defense. Steelers defense has been horrible. And I think kind of lost in here is how bad the Raiders defense has been. I almost think that, it's the Browns that put up 42 points on them. But I feel like if the Raiders lost that game 42-21, people will be, shining a light on that bad defense a bit more. And, when you look at the Chargers, again, I just think you're right. Who they've faced in, Josh Allen and Beathard. I always want to call him Bobby Beathard, but in C.J. Beathard. It just isn't a pass defense that's held up. I mean, when you give up 27 points, and give Beathard credit and give Shanahan credit for having him well prepared, but some of that has to be blame on the defense. You can't be giving up 27 points to a C.J. Beathard-led team. We saw what Beathard did last year, and he's just not the type of quarterback that should be putting up those kind of numbers against an NFL defense.
Yeah, it's just surprising me that the total for Falcons Steelers is 4.5 points higher. I think that's the overreaction versus the spotlight has not been shining as brightly on the Chargers and Raiders defenses for how badly they've been. Yep. So just to recap the 5 best bets, Carolina -4 first half against the Giants. Jaguars +3 on the road against the Chiefs. Seahawks -7 on the road. Rams -7 on the road against the Seahawks. Yep. Browns +3 at home against the Ravens. And Chargers, Raiders over 53 points. But I like our 5 this week.
I do. I'm always impressed how you remember all that at the end, too. He's doing it without notes, without cue cards, without any kind of teleprompter. This is your guy, Max Meyer.
Anyway, so I'm Max Meyer and Scott Gramling, and we at SI Gambling are happy to provide this kind of content for you every week, and we hope you join us for next week's video, which will be out on Thursday, and good luck with your bets this weekend.
Have a profitable weekend, everybody.